Here, let me just bring this little thing up. This is, I wrote this, okay. Why would anyone want to be a woman AD? Does anyone really know? There are few joys in Mudville. The job is lonely. There is no path for the pioneer. There is no shining star that guides the weary traveler. There is resistance.
Because girls just aren't as tough as guys are.
Tension.
I mean, everybody should have a fair chance.
Agony. Where and what is the reason to pay the price? February 22nd, 1976. My mother was a poet.
So there has been women's athletics on the university campus for over 100 years. It's just looked different in terms of competing with other colleges or competing against, intramurally or that kind of thing.
U of O had an athletics program, part of the physical education department, athletics program for women. They didn't dare call it intercollegiate sport. They called it the Northwest Women's Sports Association. And Title IX, 1972, there started to be a little more emphasis, but within the PE department.
Title IX is a pretty short law. It's about 30 words and basically prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in higher education or all education. The Department of Health, Education and Welfare starts to enumerate these different aspects of the educational experience where discrimination may be happening. About half of those were related to the experience of female students in both physical education and intercollegiate athletics. It was everything from uniforms to practice facilities, competition facilities, publicity, having head coaches, coaches' salaries, medical trainers, kind of all aspects of that.
I think we were ahead of the game from the very start in Oregon with interest in women's sports. And the equality probably got there sooner because there actually are people in the community who cared from the very start.
My name is Becky Sisley, and I came to the University of Oregon as a new instructor in 1965. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that then they created sort of this unit of women's intercollegiate athletics. And I became the chair of that group within the PE department, the women's PE department.
Becky works hard. And her assignment, she'd been a coach in the physical education department for both softball and field hockey.
It was around 75, 76, there was a task force for the whole university related to compliance with Title IX. So I was fighting for things that the women needed.
The women's program is quite different from what they have available for the men's program, and this is where the university is going to have to make more equitable opportunities for the women in view of these items.
Becky was really the person who made it happen. She was the one and only person who was in the room with the men's administrators and trying to advocate for women's non-revenue sports in addition to the men's non-revenue sports.
I think that's a very difficult question that we're facing and that the school district is going to have to be making some decisions about is how much more can they add to the current budget in terms of providing equal opportunity.
I mean, it was pretty darn stressful, I'm not kidding. As late as 78, we didn't have a softball field. I was a softball coach. I was the women's athletic director. We didn't have it.
It was hard for her. It was really a difficult task because she was the only person.
To forge the way is almost unbearable. As an administrator, one is separated from the fold, and the cleavage grows deeper for the introvert. The cutting edge penetrated nearly to the bone. Where is the buffer? Where is the comfort of the known? Where is the satisfaction of accomplishment? The little things that make life worth the fight.
in 1977, the president of the university decided the women's athletics department needed to be part of the men's intercollegiate athletic department. And he said, "Zap, you're in."
April 1st, 1977, there was an article that said, the head of the NC2A discovered oil. You know what it was? Women's athletics. So that's how the women got moved into the NC2A.
And of course, women's athletics had no money. There was no fundraising going on. It was tough sledding.
One day I was in Johnson Hall. I think after the meeting, I might have wrote a memo of what we needed, and then I got a letter back that said we're getting all of this.
I think right now we're getting some of the things that we do need in, and our personnel will be at an essential level, not what we might really desire, but it will be adequate at a minimum level of operation for next year.
And within a year, we started having co-ed meets. First meet was a dual meet with Washington, where both the men and the women competed for the first time ever at Hayward Field. From 1977, 78 on, it was all meets were co-ed.
Well, it really is a national championship now. In the last few years, it's increased, gotten better every year. You know, right now, there are a lot of schools that have scholarship money, and so the best athletes who normally run for clubs are going to school because they're getting the same advantages the men are.
I distinctly remember having a team meeting before a meet saying, if you do something really well and the crowd appreciates it, take a victory lap. Please take a victory lap. They want you to. And then they realized, hey, you know, this is pretty fun.
Is the challenge just to do the best one can until the forces burst the being. There must be some compassion and understanding. There must be reason to withstand the unknown and bear up under undue pressure. Why else would there be a sane woman AD?
Why was it so important for you to, accomplish all these things that you were accomplishing?
Well, that's what the law said, and that's what we deserved. Why not? I think everything was tough. Tough to do and tough to get what you needed, and difficult negotiating with the men. It's hard for me to remember having coaching staff meetings, where you'd get the feeling of morale or a adhesive group, because it was so in its infinite stage of development, I would say.
The influence of Becky Sisley is undeniable on not only shepherding the women's program through all the effects of Title IX, but also setting them up for success. I mean, she was heavily involved, not only as she was coaching, but also being the first women's athletic director and trying to oversee all aspects of women's athletics. Shepherding through this really monumental federal change. I mean, the impacts, we're still feeling the impacts of Title IX over 50 years later.
Over time, there's just been across the board, across the country, across schools, just a greater commitment to providing more opportunity and equitable opportunities for women, better coaching, better facilities. More and more young women are competing at the grassroots levels, which means that the level of competition in college is elevated. And then again, just all the opportunity it created for young women, scholarship opportunities for a lot of people, a lot of young women. Without those scholarship opportunities, they wouldn't have been able to go to school.
Being a national champion or All-American in the 80s, you have to understand that they would be in high school as the effects of Title IX are starting to affect their career. And now we can see this generational change, right? So when you have the women winning the Triple Crown, that's this whole generational change.
It was the excitement of winning, but also we actually did it. And then it's collegiate record, all these things just from that moment that flowed, that made it so much more than just a 4x4. Being a part of Oregon's track and field team and then being supported also by Oregon's Women in Flight program and the Daisy Ducks and just all these incredible, fearless and just amazing, strong community of women runners that are just pushing for more opportunity for the future. It was something that we've always had but just never had the opportunity to do.
If you think about boardrooms, we still say there are not as many women in boardrooms as there should be. That's true. But of the women who are in boardrooms, huge percentages are people who competed as athletes. And so I think one of the things that athletics brings, and Title IX is tied to this, is things that in the moment seem less tangible, like resilience, dealing with adversity, working as a team, setting goals, working towards your goals. Those are things that serve everybody well. And as sport has become an increasing part of women's lives, I think women have had more access to gaining those skills. And I think that's contributed to women's success beyond athletics.
Yes, you've been pretty darn good. Did you get a flavor of what it was? Huh? Do you know more about me now? Are you lucky to have me for your mother?